Do you feel smarter sitting higher now? No, but you all should feel smarter because you're with us. Average what? I thought you raised it when you're up here. No, I'm lower, so you want to look better. Thank you. Lower than your average. Yeah.
That would be a great step. Carrie. Vomiting up.
Oh, yes.
Do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, and Mike's on, so
Mike's we're good to go. Okay.
we're back running.
Then we will do this. All right, we will call this meeting, pre-meeting of the Orem City Planning Commission to order at 3:54 p.m. on August 21st, 2024. We will start by giving Ryan a few minutes to speak to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a little bit of an announcement tonight. It's kind of already out of the bag because Gary's sitting in the chair, but Gary McGinn has been so kind to join Development Services as the Assistant Development Services Director. He will also be still serving as Assistant City Attorney. So he's wearing two hats, just like I am. I'm still a Development Services Director, but also Assistant City Manager. So Gary will be taking over Planning Commission and helping me free up some of my time to work on some other issues. So Gary will be taking my place in the chair. We also will be hiring a planning division manager, which will take over the majority of the planning duties. And Gary will still be involved, but those roles will be a little bit divvied up. Just to give you some past history, Jason Bench was our planning division manager. Then he was promoted to Assistant Development Services Director, but retained those duties. And so you can kind of see how we're splitting duties up, and you'll see a new job or a new employee here in the next, hopefully 3 or 4 weeks. It will be that division manager. You'll get to know them and interact with them anymore, but I bid you all adieu and have enjoyed working with you, and I'll miss you, but I'm still here. So if you ever have any needs, let me know and I'll help you out and get you the information you need. But with that, Gary, good luck, man, and have at it. And I'll miss this meeting, but I'll be heavily involved in other things as city manager assigns to me. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. And we do appreciate all that you've done to help us and the support that you've given us over time. All right, we will begin with our presentation by John Dorney and talk about traffic study criteria.
Okay. So I don't know who wasn't here last time. I presented this on July 17th. So this is a little bit of a recap. I did email this to you just to kind of spark some memory. So we have 20 minutes or so. So I'll kind of burn through this again, but we'll talk about it. And I added some slides at the end. So this is a part one that we've already seen before, and it's regarding how traffic studies are performed and how the thinking is there. I used this as an example last time. This is on 8th North State. There's things that development services look at, and they're kind of on the left here, access, drinking water, density, emergency access, sewer, fence heights, storm runoff, setbacks, building height, parking, land use and zoning. Those are things that we can quantify. The storm runoff is a calculation, but the setbacks and a lot of things we can quantify. However, traffic, you can count what's out there now, but after that, it's kind of a prediction. And so we're trying to predict what's going to happen. And that's where usually the disagreements happen, right? And so you can have 4 traffic engineers present something and they're all different because of the data going in. So we try to limit that confusion. I kind of said this a little bit boldly, that traffic will never get better, partly because it's hard to reduce traffic globally because people don't stop driving. So you can adjust it to different locations. This road on the right, they call it a road diet. The road on the left has 5 lanes, 2 in each direction. The road on the right, they got rid of it. I think it's the same lane, but less traffic will probably be on that road. So in this situation, traffic is probably better on the right side, but that had to go somewhere else. So it got worse somewhere else. So it's this constant shuffle and pushing traffic around. I think I mentioned this. We need to fix traffic at this location. You've probably heard it or said it yourself. We can probably fix traffic at a spot, but it's going to push it somewhere else. So I don't see, and then maybe someone can have an opposing argument, but I don't see traffic ever going down as a whole, generally. Again, this is kind of this visual I tried to show where we have traffic constantly coming in up here on the top, and that congestion level is the height of that bottle. Depending on congestion, it depends on this choke point, which is intersections in the roadway. So it's pretty simple. The narrower the road, the worse the intersections, the more congestion you have. So when engineers say we want to widen the road, we don't do it in pipe lengths, a 10-inch pipe, a 12-inch pipe. It's 24 feet. Like that's the minimum you can widen the road to get a lane in each direction. So it's a big deal. And we recognize that, but that's the thinking of it. There's opposing, we want traffic better to move, but we also don't want quality of life down. So it's definitely an opposing things. I mentioned this humorously. Traffic studies have layers. That is because as we create a traffic study, we're adding conditions to it. I think you mentioned, Britton, we have an existing condition that we can quantify, and then after that, it's a guess, right? So we look at the traffic now, that's measurable. Then we look at traffic in 5 years, that's an estimate. And then we look at traffic in 5 years with this project on top of that. And then what about 20 years? How do you guess 20 years of traffic? And then other traffic or other projects around that you're not counting. So it becomes a massive amounts of layers. That's why you see the appendices are 200 pages long, is because you have this layer, and every single layer has its own analysis. So, we look at access, we look at safety, and we talked about letter grades before. It used to be C was the standard. Now we've dropped it to D. UDOT's been D for a long time. There's been discussion of even lowering it to E, which is good and bad, meaning if it's E for the developer, then it's E for us. Like whatever we put on the public is what we need to maintain. So if it goes tighter and we want a better grade for a developer, then we actually have to also adhere to that letter, better grade. And to reduce some of this error and this biasness that comes in, well, I've mentioned all the different institutes and publications. These are all different manuals that we all try to refer to because it's work that someone else has done and we don't have to recreate the wheel. We discussed gathering data. So this is the day of week traffic fluctuations. You can see Monday here, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This green line kind of represents traffic fluctuations by the week. So we don't gather data any other days but Tuesday through Thursday. So we don't count it on a Saturday. Now, there might be traffic studies that they want specifically on a Saturday if it's a Saturday specific item. That will be done that way. But it fluctuates so much that we just try to get the average commute day, which is Tuesday through Thursday. And then there's seasonal. We can't wait to go count right here in March and April where it's the average. We just have to count. And so we look at monthly fluctuations throughout the year and say, well, if we count it in June, then we're going to be up here. So we need to lower the data by 2.5%. Or if we count it in November, December, we have to raise it by 3%. And what we use is UDOT has traffic counters that are permanent all over the place. And we try to find them close by. When I say close by, it could be 3 or 4 miles each. And then we just get an average of, okay, what does it look like that's going on based on that data? Because they count every day, all day. So there's permanent count stations. We try to get, again, the best data we can.
This is just a curiosity question, but how many permanent count stations does UDOT have in Orem proper?
So there might be 5 total if we're
Okay.
lucky.
I'm just curious.
But sometimes like State Street, but we don't usually apply State Street to 1600 North, right? So we have to take it with a grain of salt where we're saying, oh yeah, State Street says this, so we're going to apply it to 16th. But if there's no other data,
That's what you
sometimes we
have.
do, like when we do historical growth, anywhere beyond 1, 2, 3% is high. So we try to gather historical growth. And if we're talking that kind of data, we can actually look at 1600 North because UDOT counts it and go back to 10 years and do our own there from a growth standpoint.
So the illustrations you gave, the graphs, that's just a sample. It's nothing that pertains to any streets in Orem, correct?
Right. This is freezing up. So let me go back. There we go. So what it was is the graphic was so bad that I got off the federal government website. I traced it over. So it's a representation, but I do know, December is usually lower and then it goes up in the summer. So it's a representation, but it
isn't accurate. It's just,
Yeah.
but it is a representation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we would do is we would look at very specific count data. We don't go off of this chart. We would go in and look at the 4 or 5 count stations and get this data from them and then adjust it.
So this would cover how much of the road system in Orem? Is that an aggregate or is that?
Yeah, we try to take as many data points as we can
Yes.
and say, okay, based on this data, these are the adjustments we recommend. If one's way out, then we can throw it out. But
Yeah.
this doesn't fluctuate by much. The 2.5%, 3.5%. You can see the other one was 20%. So even though the graphs are similar in scale, the daily fluctuations on a weekend are massive compared to the daily fluctuations on a yearly basis. But the point is that we want you as planning commissioners to know that if a traffic study is done based on our specs as a city, this is what they're supposed to be doing. And that's what we check. And so by the time you get a study, we've reviewed it 2 or 3 times and said, and I asked the developers, give me your trip generation and your distribution first before you do anything. Because if you get that wrong, everything else is wrong after that. So that's what we try to do for them. And again, we talked about what is traffic like now. I think, I don't know if there was a video link to this, but this is the UVU roundabout. I think we're hovering above a church building and Krispy Kreme is to our back, and University Parkway. So we look at traffic counts from an existing standpoint. What are the queuing? What's the queuing doing? You can see a UTA bus over here. Are they backing up onto University Parkway? And so the existing condition tells us a lot. And this is a drone picture. We talked a little bit about traffic modeling. A way to predict future traffic is using MAGS and the WFRC's traffic model that covers from Payson to Brigham City. So we usually carve out, or as part of the master planning process, we made that more detailed. If you look at like pixels, MAG might have one big pixel for this part of Orem. We come in and make it smaller and carve it out better. So when we do our own master plans and studies, it's a better quality because they just can't do that much detail. So, but we look at WFRC's /MAGS model. We also look at the local micro simulation models. We'll talk about that. And then what we try to do is, I think I showed this last time. Looks like my browser doesn't like it. That was a little simulation model that basically crudely tries to duplicate what you see in real life. And if you know that your model doesn't duplicate real life, how is it going to duplicate future correctly? So we have to go through and modify the model to make it match real life what we see to establish a baseline. And then after that, it's like, okay, if this matches now and we increase the volume here, then we trust it. But there's no way to confirm it because you're looking in the future. But we do our best to do that. You mentioned trip generation. It's basically how much traffic is the site going to generate. And there's a ITE, or Institute of Transportation Engineers, trip generation manual. It's a national manual. It's this thick, and it's got land uses, bowling alleys, C-stores, gas stations. They put out a request for data. They're lagging. They're always 6 or 8, 10 years behind because new things show up. Like there used to not be a C-store. And when gas stations brought in convenience, the gas station was bigger than convenience, but now the convenience is bigger than the gas. So now they have a gas station with a C-store and a C-store with a gas station. Or they have these swig things, the soda shops, those didn't exist. And so they constantly are a little bit behind. So we sometimes have to gather local data. Hence the second bullet item here. Orem uses a higher residential rate than the national rate. And if it's a redevelopment project, so if you're tearing down an apartment complex and you're building a higher complex, you're supposed to take out the traffic from that complex and subtract it out of the new traffic so that there's a net gain or loss. And if it's new construction, it's just all new trips. It's just 100% new. So this is an actual project that's a consultant submitted. They gave us the ITE trip generation rate. If we just use the national, there's about 1,400 trips a day. If you apply the Orem higher rate increase, you're up to 2,100. So this also filters down to the AM peak. You go from 115 to 171 and then 121 to 180. So Orem, I believe, 20 plus years ago, Provo did a study of 30 housing tracts, and they came up with new trip generation rates. And I think that's what Orem uses. I can't find any reference of where they came up with it, but I know Provo did a study years ago, and it was so expensive and big that no one's redone it again. And so back when we were going to college in early 90s, you could have 8 or 9 people a house and it wasn't regulated. So since it's been regulated, I don't know if that number's been updated, but we still kind of stick with it. Hence, who was saying that someone left their house 4 times before 9 a.m. So
What was the year of that study?
I'd have to almost go look in the Provo. It might quote it in the Provo master plan. As the versions have gotten older or newer, they've added, included less and less data where they got it from. But I could find out. I think it might be quoted in theirs. But I think it's been 30 years. 20
It
years.
is 395.
Yeah.
That's close enough.
So it's been a long time, but it was an extensive one that I don't think people want to pay for again. So,
And just for clarification, that's where the 40% number comes from? Okay.
yeah, the 40, that's my opinion, because I don't know if Orem has done any, or if they looked at it and said, hey, Provo sees an increase. We're also like that.
So the challenge that you're facing here is to determine how much traffic is occurring. And based on that, you move forward with plans.
Yeah.
So how confident are you that what you're estimating is accurate?
Yeah, he's saying that the challenges that he's using is that they're access to flawed data.
I understand that.
Yeah, so
No,
we
Basically,
we
all
go
of
through
it's
all
flawed.
these steps to try to get the
Right.
best data we can.
Right.
We didn't have event centers were a big thing 10 years ago, and we didn't have good event center data in the ITE book. So we counted 5 event centers, one in Provo, one in Layton, and just, okay, well, how big's the hotel it's attached to? How big's the event? Is it all that is so dynamic? Because if you have a massive hotel with 5 or 6 rooms, and that's different than one hotel with 1 room. So you have to really get in to get that data right to present it. Casinos. I worked in Nevada. there wasn't a very good trip gen for casinos, especially smaller ones. And so we had to go figure out how to trip gen a casino. So the idea is to get as best data we can with what we have. And sometimes it's not a guess, it's just that's the data we have. So there's rarely a post study. With the lofts, we actually are committed to doing a post study because we can isolate that neighborhood because it doesn't go anywhere east and south. So with that one, we are going to do our own post. But once a McDonald's built, no one goes back and say, did we get that traffic right? You know, because there's so many other things affecting just that area. So let's see, speed it up here because we're getting close. Trip generation, this is just a page of the manual. Some of the data, we can go through it, but that's what we look at to say, okay, those lines and those little dots have to do with where the data points come in, and it has to do with the average. This is an actual drawing of people trying to estimate where traffic will come and go. It's a manual thing. You actually physically put in, if I was driving down State Street and I wanted to go over here, how would I get there? And this is what we review as part of a traffic study that comes in. We talked about pass-by traffic. If you're a McDonald's or Chevron, you're going to want to go on a road that has a lot of traffic because people aren't going to go out of their way to go to fast food. They're going to pull out and go. And so depending how far people will go out of their way to go to that item and that site will depend on kind of how this diverted link down here, these diverted traffics will go, and different land uses have different diverted links. When we do a traffic study for Chevron, 75% of the traffic is not new. It's just, they're stopping there because it's convenient. But if you're a dental office, 100% is new because who's going to stop at the dentist on a whim? So depending on the land use, we look at how to affect the diverted links. We talked a little bit about output level of service. This is where we get D. These are the parameters of how the program spits out level of service. It's based off of the average number of seconds each vehicle waits at a light. So if you're at an unsignalized intersection and you're there 30 seconds, it's level of service D. Now, oftentimes you wait at a light, you just hit the red, you're there for 2 minutes guaranteed because it's a 2-minute cycle almost everywhere. So it's average and it's an estimate, right? It's a black box trying to duplicate what actually happens because you have reaction time. And if you notice with the cell phones, people don't like, what are you doing up there, right? Like there's a lot of honking going on, but there's a lot of people on their cell phone looking, and then all of a sudden it's green, and you'll notice that reaction time due to culture and society is way different. Now, I don't know if that's accounted for, but that's an issue, and that's calculated. If it's a high area that has a lot of recreation and you have a lot of visitors from out of the area, there's a factor to put in there that says they're unfamiliar, and so they're looking around. But if it's just a regular commute, so there's factors to adjust that. But this is kind of the calculation that the federal government came up with that we use. Here's an output. It's hard to see, but all this data is all the output when we look at an intersection, US 89 State and 8 South, green time, pedestrian time, HCM platoon ratios. It includes all of these things. And that's where we can get in and try to make sure that we match the existing condition by messing with these parameters. Visual example of A, B, C, D, E, F. This is our acceptable, called borderline unstable, but that's an actual picture of what someone estimates D to be during commute times only. Here's another cartoon kind of version. What an intersection may look like. Simulation graphics. So if you were to turn this on, these cars would be running and you can see the little lines and paths, and you can see, okay, there's a problem queuing, and I'm going to go out there and look, does it really look like that in the morning, in the afternoon? If it does or doesn't, we can adjust it. So we wrapped this up last time with this slide, just emphasizing we rely on existing data and manuals that we try to direct information and get information from. We do layer the scenarios as we don't just go, here's the end of the study. And there's nothing in between. There's always an in between of if we do an improvement in 2030, then it must be there in 2050. So we include it. But if it's not needed till 2040, we don't show it in 2030. So as you layer it and we look at mitigation measures, we include those in the next layer. So that's what the layering does. We also match the general plan and TMP. When we look and do studies, we look at the neighborhood connectivity plans, vehicle queuing. Safety is a little bit obscure. We can look at crash data in the past. And you can look at safety from a sight distance and things, but sometimes you just can't quantify bad drivers. So we try to address that in a qualitative way. Sight distance is calculated based on clear zones. Mitigation is what we recommend at the end of a study. And I throw road impact fees in there because when a developer has we don't have to do anything, we're fine. And it's hard to read that from a traffic study. We don't recommend anything. They are paying impact fees that have to be spent on roads in the city within 6 years. And so there is an element that whatever they're building, there is an impact financially that they're paying. If we have a few minutes, this is the second part. There's an item in the transportation master plan and one of the appendices. These are the traffic study requirements that we put on people to do in our city. You must have a current PE, a firm, or an individual that specializes in traffic. And then there's these specific software programs. It's a unique niche thing. So there's only a handful of traffic software companies that actually match the federal government's highway capacity manual. The manual is a massive manual with printed formulas that people take and put into software. Like there's no way we're doing a manual calculation anymore. We talked about the trip gen locally adopted. The national standards 10 trips per house per day. Orem is 140. That 10 is rounded up. It's like 9.32 or something, but it ends up being 40+% increase from the national average. And we don't get much pushback from, I mean, it is what it is. When we tell developers that change it, they do it. And so they don't try to argue why. I think they just recognize the families and the schools that we have. I've already shown you this picture. Just to emphasize that this level of service D is only during commute times. So that's what we're looking at. We do have levels and tiers of traffic studies, similar to UDOT's. There's a level 1 and a 2AB and a 3 and a 4. And that has to do with, we're not going to make a developer do a whole lot of work if there's 100 trips per day or less, because that means there's 10 trips per hour in the PM peak. And so we have each one of these have a buffet of things to do in each one of them, and it gets more complicated. We're not going to have them pull crash data on a level 1. We can basically negotiate what improvements we need to do. And as you get more complicated, we make them scientifically prove why they think they can or can't do things. And so we rarely see a level 4. Back in the day, Arizona, 10,000 trips a day is, what is it, 2,000 units. We don't see 1,000 unit subdivisions, but sometimes you'll see commercial things that can do that. So that's rare, but we do have a kind of a tiered system. So that's when they send me their trip gen, I look at it and we kind of apply this. So it's a little bit back and forth. The level of service output, this is kind of what determines what mitigation. The crash data, UDOT used to publish their high and low crash routes. That is no longer available. So it's hard to compare what a good crash rate is because and you're smiling because you know why. The liability of why are you showing this high crash rate for 20 years and not do anything about it? I live off Highway 6. It's called the death road. And I live by the intersection that they get hit every couple of weeks. So they don't publish what's high and low. And so it's hard for us to compare what's an acceptable crash rate, but it is available. If we have 5 or 6 in a year, we know that's a problem. Vehicle queuing, we can manage and look at sight distance, again, triangles, when you're at an intersection, other bushes in the way. Signal timing, the traffic study lets us adjust our signal timings, and we look at striping and signing in general. I think that's it. Give you enough time to eat.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No? I guess not. So,
And we have traffic staff in both Public Works and Development Services that get together and review all these things. It's not just me. We have technical staff that creates these synchro models and looks at signal timings. And so there's a team of people that are involved with traffic, not just one person.
How does Orem compare with other communities in Utah County relative to the level of traffic? You said we're a D. Do you know what the other-
Like most are at D. It used to be C and UDOT was D, and now they just can't maintain a C. It's just too hard. And the worst part of the day is probably 15 minutes on city streets. So if we can get through the 15 or 20 minutes, especially around school zones, it's for 23, maybe 22 hours of the day, it's okay. So we as a state, and I think have it pretty good compared to others, but from a city comparison, it's just like every other metropolitan area. Provo and Orem is going to be worse. As you get out to areas, it's a little bit different, but Eagle Mountain, to get out there was a pain until they built roads. So it's just the high growth area versus established, and we're established. So it's pretty standard compared to what our growth.
The other factors that I'm considering is, in addition to just the other cities in Utah, is similar size of 100,000-ish population, and then college towns as well. Do those play into factor, or is there a comparison to other similar demographic cities in the United States?
I haven't looked at that top of my head. I do know that even within Provo and Orem, Provo has a high occupancy for students, and since we don't have student housing, they do spread out all over. So we're probably very similar. I don't know if in your history there, if there's a difference, but the size that UVU's become compared to what BYU was, we're very similar in traffic wise and that, but I haven't researched or looked at that. The U is tough because that's up in a corner. There's only two ways in, really. So that's tough traffic. I mean, they have trains that go right up into there, but it really depends on the dynamics of the location. BYU is a little bit lopsided up against 9th East. We're lopsided with no access much from the freeway. So the local road layout and grid can play a big role in that.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Okay.
I can tell you from a traffic standpoint, Provo frequently complains and says they wish they were like Orem, because Orem has more east-west connections to the freeway. Provo, it's really Center Street and the Parkway.
That's why they're trying to add 820 North as an interchange.
Yeah, and that's why a collector distributor was very interested. And they're trying to get a new interchange at 820 North. But they only have two, and Orem has 4, 5.
2000 North, 1600 North.
Where does that
Seven.
stand, that 820 North effort by Provo? Is that moving forward, or what? Do you know?
I was just talking to someone about that locally, and I think it has to come down to Provo's desire. I don't know if it's eminent domain, but
There will be some eminent domain issues. It went through, I believe, an environmental study by MAG and Provo, and so they're still looking at that. 820 would impact us quite a bit. IHC is 820 leads into IHC, and IHC, if you've been down there, they've positioned themselves with parking lots and things like that eventually 800 North, 820 turns into 800, could be their main entrance into the hospital. And the goal would be to bring a lot of traffic that might go on the Parkway on 800, 820 to the hospital, which also could connect into BYU. So there's a lot of those regional projects and things that as we work with MAG, we and other communities can impact us.
Okay. Well, but does that change? I mean, we need to actually recess and reset for our next meeting, but how does that affect us? Because if the traffic stops coming down the parkway, doesn't that affect the trip generation along the parkway and what may or may not be built along the parkway?
Yeah, it could. It could impact businesses that want to come in. I think John kind of approached it. One of the thing with traffic, and as you look at it, the numbers that come by, you know, an in and out is not going to go on a very unused commercial road. The higher the traffic count, the more likely you are to get certain types of businesses. And those businesses like to congregate. So for a healthy community, unfortunately, you do need to have some areas that have high traffic volumes, or that's not good for you. So the art that John practices, science and art, is trying to put high traffic, high density, and smart areas that don't impact residential areas. And though it's areas, we need to try and keep it lower volumes.
Thank you. We will end our pre-meeting and then start our formal meeting in about a minute. So.
Thank you. I think I will.
Okay, Grant, are we good to go? Okay. All right, guys, let's call this meeting of the Orem City Planning Commission to order at 4:35 PM on August 21st, 2024 in the City Council chambers. We'll begin by having an invocation by Britton. Thank you.
Our most gracious Father in heaven, we come before thee in humble prayer this afternoon to thank you for the opportunity that we've had to come together and to discuss the needs and the issues of Orem City of which we all love and adore. We thank you for thy presence and attention here in our city, and we ask that thou would please bless us in this meeting as we strive to work towards solutions that are beneficial to the residents of the city. They will be able to think clearly and be able to be diplomatic in all our approaches. These things we ask in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. All right, we will begin with item. Yeah. Do we need to turn up the mics?
I just can't hear Britton, so I just wanted to make sure his mic was turned on.
I wasn't like talking, oh.
Yeah, he just turned it up. It's a little louder now. Okay.
I could hear him on the recording.
Okay, sounds good. Now I can really hear myself. All right. So we will begin with item 3.1, which is a plat amendment approving the plat amendment of Cascade Estate Plat D located generally at 664 North, 960 East in the R8 zone. Cheryl?
All right, so this shows the location and where the two lots are. As you can see, it's in the R8 zone. And this will only affect that backyard property line between the two lots. It will not affect any other lot around them. So this is the existing plat showing where those two lots are. And this is the proposed plat. And you can see where the property line almost lines up with and it's a little bit to the east of the lot to the north. Oops, wrong way, sorry. But this one shows how it's moved west. So they're just moving that back property line. This is the two street views from the two ends of those two properties. And did you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Okay. Is the applicant here? And would they like to come forward? Do you have anything to say? Anything? Okay, then thank you. All right. We don't have any further questions. Should we move to motion?
Motion to approve the vacation of lots 1 and 13 of Cascade Estates Plat A and approve Cascades Estates Plat D located generally at 664 North, 960 East in the R8 zone.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Brendan moved and Jim seconded that we approve the plat amendment. Rod? Vote.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. The plat amendment is approved. Okay, item 3.2, also a plat amendment, amending all the HCA Timpanogos subdivision parcel A and approving HCA Timpanogos subdivision first amendment located generally at 650 West, 800 North in the C3 zone. Cheryl?
All right, so this shows you where it's located and it is in the C3 zone. This came through, I think, in December or the beginning of this year to have this plat recorded. In the meantime, they've been putting a new intersection in there at 600 West and 800 North. And this plat did not make it possible for that pole that supports the traffic signal to go. So this new plat is only changing that southeast part of the plat to accommodate that traffic signal pole. This shows what it looks like now. And did you have any questions on this one?
Just for clarification, is this so they can put the light to align it with Orem Jr. across the way?
Taggart, I believe that's true,
Because
correct?
I know we discussed that it might happen, so they're just doing it from the beginning.
Yeah, this is actually a UDOT project. So they've hired a consultant to design that, and then they're building it. And then we have a small project on the south side of that intersection to align the vehicle lanes striping.
Thank you.
And we asked them to do this, so it's at the city's request.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Would they like to come forward? Okay, Then if there are any other questions from the planning commission? Okay, then let's move to motion. Someone like to move?
I move that we approve the planning commission recommendation to amend HCH Timpanogos subdivision parcel A and approve HCA Timpanogos subdivision First Amendment located generally at 650 West, 800 North in the C3 zone.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Rod moves and Britton second that we approve the amendment of the plat for HCA. Let's go to voting.
Aye.
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 Okay, the motion's unanimous and that plat amendment is approved. Then we'll move on to item 3.3, which is a preliminary plat, approving the preliminary plat of Arcadia Heights Plat A and B located generally at 1430 South, 400 West in the R12 and R8 zone. Cheryl?
Okay, this shows you the location of this property. You've seen it before. It came through before Sherwood Haven. It's now going to be Acadia Heights. And if you look at the zoning map, you can see that the green part is R12, the light yellow is R8. So this will have two separate zones. That's why there are two separate plats. This is just a preliminary utility plan. If you look on the south side of that cul-de-sac, there is going to be a 20-foot sewer easement that will extend through there to the property to the east. And that's at the city's request. And that's what the agreement in your packet was referring to. So that we will help them pay for that. That will give sewer access to those properties on the east. These are the grading plans. I'm not sure how much detail you want to go in on those. This is proposed Plat A. This is mostly in the R12 zone. So the lots will meet those zone requirements. This is the proposed Plat B, which is mostly in the R8 zone. And there's that cul-de-sac on the south, where that sewer line will connect to the properties on the east. This is the part of the agreement that refers to this. Will be an 8-inch sewer line extension. And this is the more detail of that sewer line. It's not really going to benefit this particular subdivision. They're doing it so that the properties to the east will have sewer access. And this shows the location of it. And you can see those three lots on the north at 1450 South. They will now have access through the city property, and also as they develop those lots on the east side of 360 West, they'll have access to the sewer through there. This just shows the different development standards for the two different zones. So the R12 will have 12,000 square foot lots with 100 feet of frontage, and the R8 will have a minimum of 8,000 square foot lots with 80 feet of frontage. Those are minimums. And this shows what it currently looks like. Did you have any questions on this one?
I saw 25 homes, 25 properties.
I believe there were 24. The applicant could probably clarify that.
And what's the space between the estimated space from home to home?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The estimated gap from home to home?
So it depends on which zone it is. If it's in the R12 zone, they'll have 100 feet of frontage. And then the different setbacks are in the zone. In the R8, there's 8/20 with minimum of 8 feet on one side, and then has to total at least 20. So you'd have 8 feet on one side, 12 on the other. And I'm not 100% sure what it is in the R12. It's not as common of a.
Same.
Is it the same? Thank you.
And this is just kind of a follow-up because we've had this property several times before, is that the city council voted to eliminate the other connections, but not the one between 1430 connecting down to 400 West.
Correct.
That's
I'm not
correct,
sure
and
that they eliminated, did they eliminate any
Did
of
they
the
eliminate any
connections?
of them?
I don't think they did.
But they didn't need to connect back up the hill, because I know there had been a lot of discussion about that, so.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this will connect through from 1600 South up to 1430 South.
Okay.
And that's why it had to be noticed, because it's through a connecting street.
Yeah, it will connect from the north to the south, and then the one connection that's not going through would be the far south end going through to the east. That
one's not gonna
That's
happen.
not connecting.
And I assumed that by the cul-de-sac, but
Yeah.
you're still gonna, and that's nice that you're still gonna get the sewage up so that those
Mhm.
those properties aren't landlocked.
So this 16th South will be a cul-de-sac.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for the city? Is the developer here? Would you like to say anything?
I'm here, but
Okay,
Carol does a good job.
okay. Then, do we have any further questions?
Yeah, question.
You have to come to the mic.
You have to come to the mic. I'll let you ask a question if you want to come to the mic. It's for recording purposes, so.
My name is Roger Dudley, and I don't have any particular interest in this. Question I have, however, is the reason that we're not extending 1600 south on through to access the properties to the east. If Cheryl, would it be okay if you showed the aerial of the area? That one. If you look at the area, the street coming in from the north, the L-shaped one, has no place to go. It's already exceeds the cul-de-sac length allowed in the city. There are other properties there that will probably be coming. The big area is an area that's owned by Orem City. It's its park. I forget the name of it. But the question is, what will become of the properties? We have properties there that's shown as 1450 South and 1460 South. Those two parcels are basically landlocked. We're working on a plan in order to provide access to those. But the question is, our cul-de-sac length is already exceeded with no resolution to what to do with those dead-end streets. So my question is, and I haven't looked at it in detail, if 1600 South were to extend east instead of becoming a cul-de-sac, that would allow those dead-end streets to loop and would provide access not only for the city park, but also for the other properties in there, the vacant properties to the east of, is it 850 West? That's my only concern because we're doing some engineering for those property owners. And I question whether or not it's prudent to have this whole area be dead-ended with only one access. That's my only concern.
Thank you. We have had extensive conversations about some of this in some of the previous meetings relating to this, and that's partly why I'm bringing this up too, is because we're seeing a cul-de-sac here instead of it continuing, and so I don't know if that's a Taggart question or a Cheryl question to answer that, but thank you.
Thank you.
Because there is still those concerns about those landlocked ones, so
60 could still go down to 1600.
it could, well, yeah, on the top of the hill.
Yeah, so this could go up and down.
Yeah.
So it's still there, it just doesn't go out towards I-15 anymore, but
I
it still can
don't
go
know.
east. The connectors are still there on the map, so if we choose to draw the roads through there, we can.
Yeah. Well, the question is, would they finish 1600 to connect with 300 West?
There is a lot of opposition to connecting 1600 South through from the property owners there.
But on the top of the hill, would that road get completed? Would you bring 300 West down to meet 16th North?
360.
Is it 360 West? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's really tiny on my screen.
You'd have to in order to get to the park for one, but
Yeah.
We have looked at that and there is a challenge there with grades. There's quite a big drop off from the cul-de-sac going up to the east. And then at the top of this, where you're looking at developing up there, there's also some challenges with it's 20 to 30 foot drop off from the top, from the east side of that city owned property down to the west side of it. So there are some challenges there. And then like was just mentioned with the private property owners, they're along 16th South, that would have to all be worked out in order to make that work.
So more conversation forthcoming.
Yes, and then the extension of the cul-de-sac on the north, I think the only way to make that work and how it is now would be to go to the city council and to get some type of exception to the current ordinance is, I believe, 650 feet. And it would extend quite a bit past that, just would not be allowed, so.
but those landlocked properties, this doesn't negate any of that anyway, because these other properties are already in the way of going a different route anyway, so they couldn't go through the park.
Yeah, those are all good questions for development in the future. The issue in front of the planning commission
it's this one.
is this current request for a preliminary plat. Does it comply with our code at this time? Those are important issues. I don't mean to minimize them. And we are working on them as a city, and we'll work with any potential developers to try and come up with good solutions for those other properties. But whether this happens or not, the issue with the other undeveloped properties is still there.
Yes, thank you.
You don't like our squirrel?
I don't like ours.
A rabbit hole.
No, it is somewhat valid because of the conversations that we have had around this, but I do agree that yes, that is not dispositive to what we're doing today, and that answers that question. And yes, we can come back to what's before us, because now we have cul-de-sacs that are under 650 feet. And the road connections are there and it meets code. It's R12 where it's R12 and it's R8 where it's all R8, so. Do we have any additional questions from the planning commission regarding this property? Okay. Then should we move to motion?
I recommend we approve the preliminary plat of Acadia Heights, Plat A and B, located generally at 1430 South, 400 West in the R12 and R8 zones.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I second it.
Okay. Hasten just beat you. So Mike,
Who was the second?
Hasten.
Oh.
Yeah. So Mike moved and Hasten seconded that we approve the preliminary plat for Acadia Heights. Voting, Rod?
Aye.
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 Okay, the motion passes unanimously, and that is approved. We will move on to item 4.1, which is review and approve the meeting minutes for August 7th, 2024. They appeared fine to me. Any questions? Okay, then motion to approve.
A motion to approve the minutes from the August 7th, 2024 meeting.
Okay. Second. Hasten. Okay, so Britton moved and Hasten second that we approve the meeting minutes from August 7th, 2024. Brad?
Aye.
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 Okay, the meeting minutes are approved. Do I now look at you, Gary, and say, do you have anything for it?
Yes, sit back. No.
Squirrel.
We're good. Okay, then if that is all, then we will,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I was trying to say.
Second.
I knew you were.
Well then, Mike moved and Hasten seconded that we adjourn. Britton?
Aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned at 4:53.